Whenever you are, baby.
The list started after her first attempt. A list of everything brilliant about the world. Everything worth living for. Number 1.
Ice cream.
Number 2.
Water fights.
Number 3.
Staying up past your bedtime and being allowed to watch TV.
Number 4.
The color yellow.
Number 5.
Things with stripes.
Number 6.
Roller coasters.
Number 7.
People falling over.
All things that at 7 I thought were really good, but not necessarily things that my mom would agree with. I started the list on the 9th of November, 1987. I had been picked up late from school that day and taken to the hospital, which is where my mom was. And I didn't know what that meant because I was only 7 years old. I started the list on the 9th of November, 1987. It was late, and it was dark, and all the kids had gone home a long time ago. Eventually, though, my dad pulled up. I'm going to ask you to be my dad, if that's okay. You don't have to do much, you just have to sit here and... Now, usually it was my mom who'd pick me up from school, and normally she would be on time, and normally she would make me sit in the back seat because I was 7, and I tended to make things sticky. But this time, it was my dad, and he was late, and he opened the front door of the passenger seat. Dad looked at me, and I looked at him. Now, when something bad is about to happen, your body feels it before your brain can. It's a survival mechanism. The stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline flood your system. It's like there's been a trap door that's been opened up beneath your feet. It's fight or flight. Or stand very still. I stood as still as I could, looking at my dad. Eventually, I got myself into the car. Dad had the radio on, and the window had been down because he'd been smoking. Now, at this part, I'm going to be me as my dad, and you're going to be me at 7 years old. So, you're just going to ask me why whenever I finish the sentence. Okay. And you can use the backpack if you want. Put on your seatbelt. So that's where you would ask me why.
Why?
Because cars can be dangerous.
Why?
Because other drivers don't pay attention sometimes.
Why?
Because there's a lot to think about when you're a grown-up. There's work to do, there's bills to pay, relationships to sustain, and yet there's never enough time for it all.
Why?
Because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Why?
Because that's how long it takes for the Earth to rotate.
Why?
Because I don't know.
Why?
Because I don't know everything.
Why?
Because it's impossible.
Why?
Because it's impossible to know everything.
Why?
Because it's too much for anyone to know.
Why?
Because if anyone were able to know everything, then life would be unlivable.
Why?
Because there would be no mystery, there would be no discovery, no discussion, no conversation, no curiosity. There would be no need for our imaginations, and our imaginations are what make life bearable.
Why?
Because in order to live in the present, you have to be able to imagine a future that will be better than the past.
Why?
At least that's how I like to remember it. We actually just sat in silence. The only thing that he said to me was, "Your mother's done something stupid." And I didn't know what that meant, because I was only 7 years old. Thank you. At the hospital, my mom looked at me, and she said, "Not him." So I sat in the corridor next to this kind old couple who bought me a carton of juice and some chocolate from the vending machine. Now, I don't know exactly when I had the idea to start the list, but I do remember that it was here, next to this kind old couple, that I decided to write it down. Number 1.
Ice cream.
Number 2.
War fights.
Number 3.
Staying up past your bedtime and being allowed to watch TV.
Number 4.
The color yellow.
Number 5.
Things with stripes.
Number 6.
Roller coasters.
Number 7.
People falling over.
Number 8. Juice. Number 9. Chocolate. Number 10. Kind old people who don't act weird. and don't smell unusual. Dad was in with Mom for ages. But when he finally came out of the room, I followed him out of the hospital. I followed him through the front door, I followed him down the hallway, and then I followed him up the stairs until he went into the study and shut the door before I could follow him in any further. But I waited around to see what kind of music he put on. I knew the rules. If it was this woman singing, it meant that I could go into the room. If it was the kind of music you could sing and dance to, though, it meant that I could go in, but I also ran the risk of being hugged and spun around in his chair. And if there was no singing, it meant that he was working and I should probably be quiet. And if it just sounded like all of the instruments were falling down the stairs, well, it meant that I should probably leave him alone. So, I waited to see what kind of music he put on. I went down the stairs and I made myself some dinner. It was a ham and mayo sandwich, just without the ham. I sat down in front of the TV and I continued with my list. But it occurred to me that there was no reason why the list should be in any particular order. There's no way of saying, for example, that Danger Mouse was objectively better than spaghetti bolognese. Number 23.
Danger Mouse.
Number 24.
Spaghetti bolognese.
Number 25.
Wearing a cape.
Number 26.
Eating in the sea and nobody knows.
I stayed up late into the night writing my list, and I fell asleep in the living room. Dad must have carried me upstairs. Mom didn't come home for about a week or so, and when she finally came home, the list had grown to 8 pages long and had 314 things on it. I laid it on her pillow and I titled it Every Brilliant Thing. She never mentioned it to me, but I knew that she'd read it because she'd corrected my spelling.